In 7 seconds, it will be 4:13 here on All in a Day. Well, a recent human rights ruling is shedding light onto discriminatory pay for people with intellectual disabilities. For years, Terry Lynn Gary worked at a bottling company in St. Catharines for $1.25 an hour, while her co-workers doing a similar job earned minimum wage. All because the work that Gary did was classified as work activity and training for people with intellectual disabilities. The Ontario Human Rights Tribunal says this was discriminatory, and it recommends the Human Rights Commission find ways to put a stop to this activity. It's an area my next guest has been involved in for years. Keenan Weller is Executive Director of Live, Work, Play. His group tries to find work and volunteer opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities. He's with me now in studio. Hi there.
Hi, good to be here.
What do you think of the tribunal's decision?
Well, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to shed light on a situation probably most citizens are not aware of, that there are people working in sub-minimum wage arrangements across the province. And so it's a brave thing that the individual and her family did, and it took many, many years, and now we have a decision that can give us some guidance going forward.
Do you think that those kinds of training positions should be shut down?
Well, I think there's always a place for activities that are transitional and supporting people to have a life in the community, whether it's employment or housing or whatever it might be. I think the obvious case here is that this is not transitional, and people are going and staying and also providing an economic advantage to, in this situation, to the company that was employing them. So these things started back in the 1950s when they were extremely progressive in terms of helping people be more visible and active in their community. And the problem is, since they kind of exploded in the 1970s, it's 50 years later, and we've kind of neglected to look back at the situation and realize that in this day and age, we don't really support that type of inequality, and we can do a lot better.
Because Live, Work, Play, we should mention, actually ran a sheltered workshop at one point. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, we never called it that, and we didn't think of it that way. It was supposed to be transitional, so we started a woodworking shop, and then we were actually creating and selling signage in the local community. And what we realized quickly within about a year was that nobody was actually transitioning. So the idea that they were getting skills and confidence, and then they would take this and get employed elsewhere. What we figured out, what we needed to do was just go and talk to employers and match up these individuals to jobs that worked for them. And that's what we do now, and it's very successful. So
how is it that people with disabilities can be paid less than minimum wage anyway?
Well, I think, yeah, as your introduction explained, there is this sort of a loophole, or perhaps it's ending, but by framing things as a training experience, it gets around the Labor Code, but also the Charter of Rights. But
what
yes.
does that fall under, a training experience? If it is a loophole, is there something actually in the Charter or in our labor laws that says it's okay?
Yes, well, it's complicated. So federally, as I understand it, if it's seen as a program that is actually helping people with disabilities, then it's exempt. And then provincially, they've been using an exemption related to the fact that it's framed as a training, but it wasn't well defined. It didn't say, for example, training that goes beyond 30 years is no longer training. That's, settling into something. So it's something people have been struggling with, and also worried about what else will be done if we get rid of all this infrastructure where there is, a place for people to go. What else will we do? And so there's a lot of fear, and it's taking a long time to make that shift.
I guess that's the other thing. If you take away this kind of opportunity for people, and all with all the caveats that have just been stated ahead of time, is there something to take its place? Is there something that still gives people with intellectual disabilities that kind of opportunity?
Well, I think we have to look at what other people in our community do if they don't have full-time work, for example. We don't cluster them together in a room and give them activities. There is a very lively opportunities, but I think also we look at where are we investing our tax dollars. So the statistics aren't great, but from what we've gathered, it's about 3 times the investment in these segregated, congregated sort of situations versus actually supporting people to try and help them find employment. So our investment is misaligned, and so our results are misaligned. And our little agency, we only have 3 people that work in employment supports, and we've had great success. The unemployment rate is about 75% for this population, but with a little bit of help from us, we've have that, and I think we can do even better, because there's amazing creative employers in Ottawa who've demonstrated they can benefit from paying people an appropriate wage and their talents.
But are there people in Ottawa right now who are doing what this bottling company was doing, where you've got people using it stated as a training program with intellectual disabilities where they're, the equivalent of being paid $1.25 an hour?
There definitely are some, and there's in fact people not being paid at all because it would be described as an activity center or some other name where it's maybe the intent is not so much to replicate a work-like environment. So certainly there's the issue of human rights around paying people less than minimum wage, but there's also the greater issue of just valuing people, and that we don't need to create a parallel society where we cluster them and sort of care for them. Another approach is how do we support them to be a part of everything that the rest of us is a part of.
We've been hearing about the possibility for a class action lawsuit in this. Is it common enough for one to be profitable?
Oh, definitely, and it's taken place in various places across the United States where there's been a similar issue. In Oregon, there is a very large class action lawsuit, and specifically what the people are arguing is that this is not a support to me, it is a barrier to me that I have been in this sheltered workshop, and what I want is support to get a real job. And President Obama also recently changed their federal laws around contracting, so they will no longer contract with anyone, any company or agency that is using sub-minimum wage exemptions.
So if the commission goes ahead and investigates this, what do you want them to keep in mind?
Well, I think it's all about what we're going to do next. So you're going to shed light on this, and you're going to find a lot of well-meaning people who, in their hearts, believe that this is a place where people can go and that they're happy. And there will be a lot of that feedback. And I guess it's just to keep in mind that if people don't have anything to compare with, then saying that they're happy is not a good evaluation. So we have supported people who were in these sheltered workshops and then got a real job, and they're unequivocal that they do not want to go back to the sheltered environment. They want the real job. So I think if we are comparing apples to apples, we will find that that is what people want, even if it's hard and even if it's difficult.
Before I let you go, you somewhat jokingly made the reference to the 30 years in the program, and we're hearing about how long Terry Lynn Gary was there. How long do you think a training program should go on? Because I'm just thinking it's central to your argument seems to be the idea that somebody just stays in that forever and never moves on or transitions. What is a realistic amount of time?
In the values adopted by our association, the members said that it shouldn't be any different from a training program offered to a non-disabled person. I think that's the best standard. So whatever training opportunities and internships and things like that, we've heard debate around that as well in the province. For people with or without disabilities, it should just be the same as other citizens, and then we'll arrive at the right place. However long that is, as long as it's not unique to people with disabilities, then it's cool.
Keenan Weller, thanks for your time as always.
Thank you.
Keenan Weller, Executive Director of Live, Work, Play. What do you think of what he had to say, and what do you think of what the Human Rights Tribunal finds in this case? Do you think there are programs that could take the place of the kind of minimum wage work that we're talking about, the training programs, the work activity and training programs that are being discussed here? All in a day at cbc.ca is our email address. You can also tweet us, CBC, all in a day. We'll be talking more about work in the next half hour.